As autumn turned to winter in 2017, the Philadelphia Eagles were soaring. Led by their sensational sophomore quarterback, the Eagles had unexpectedly emerged as the class of the NFC and were solidifying themselves as Super Bowl favorites. And then, in one fell swoop, their championship dreams were seemingly dashed by an untimely injury to their emergent superstar. The Eagles' wings had been clipped, and Philadelphia's long-suffering fans, it seemed, would have to wait at least one more year for that elusive first Super Bowl title. Except they didn't. Instead, that devastating season-ending injury set in motion one of the most unbelievable championship runs in NFL history, an improbable journey that turned a humble backup quarterback into a football legend. In retrospect, everything about the 2017 Eagles beggars belief, not just their incredible finish. They had no business being as good as they were from the get-go. That team, after all, was seemingly still finding its footing. The season prior marked the beginning of a new era, with a new head coach in Doug Peterson and a rookie quarterback in Carson Wentz, and, predictably, the Eagles experienced some growing pains. Philadelphia finished 7-9 in 2016, good for last place in the NFC East, and were unspectacular on both sides of the ball. Some growth was to be expected in 2017, and the offseason additions of Alshon Jeffrey and LeGarrette Blount gave them a little more juice, but contending for a Super Bowl? That wasn't in the cards. Or was it? The Eagles burst out of the gate in 2017. In their season opener, they picked up a 13-point victory on the road in Washington, with Wentz throwing multiple touchdown passes in the game's first 20 minutes. In their home opener 2 weeks later, they picked up a second straight win against a division rival, outlasting the Giants 27-24. The following Sunday, they squeaked out another close victory, downing the Chargers 26-24. And then they really hit their stride. In Week 5, the Eagles slaughtered the Cardinals, with Wentz recording the first 4-touchdown game of his young career. He then threw 3 more touchdown passes the following Sunday to propel the Eagles past the Carolina Panthers. The next week, 4 more passing touchdowns for Wentz and another Eagles win. And they just didn't stop. By the time their bye week arrived in mid-November, the Eagles were 8-1 with a comfortable lead atop the NFC East and were looking like a bona fide juggernaut. In his second NFL season, Wentz, who posted the 6th worst QB rating in the league as a rookie, was seemingly blossoming into one of the game's most promising young quarterbacks. A development fueled in no small part by Philadelphia's exceptional offensive line, led by burgeoning All-Pro center Jason Kelce. And opposing defenses were helpless. Heading into the final stretch of the season, Wentz led the NFL in passing touchdowns, ranked 4th in QB rating, and was making the case for an MVP award. More importantly, however, his emergence had transformed the Eagles into not merely a Super Bowl contender, but an out-of-nowhere Super Bowl favorite. And then, as quickly as it started, the Eagles' magical season seemingly came to a devastating end. During the third quarter of Philly's Week 14 matchup against the Rams, Wentz took a big hit to his left knee on a touchdown run that was ultimately called back due to a holding penalty. Though he initially remained in the game and managed to connect with Jeffrey shortly thereafter for his 4th touchdown pass of the contest and a franchise record 33rd of the season, Wentz eventually headed to the locker room with a noticeable limp. He didn't return.
He is done for today. We do not know the severity of the knee injury, but I can tell you, as I was standing back by that Eagles locker room, all the support staff that was back there with Carson Wentz all walked out just shaking their heads, Joe.
Fans throughout Philadelphia held their breath and crossed their fingers, but Peterson still had a game to win. And with his team trailing in the 4th quarter, he turned to the number 2 quarterback on his depth chart. Nick Foles, the former 3rd-round pick out of Arizona and longtime backup who had made all of 4 pass attempts that season. And to his credit, Foles acquitted himself well in his first meaningful action of the year. He marched Philadelphia downfield to set up a field goal in his first drive, then did it again minutes later to help the Eagles escape LA with a victory and clinch their first division title since 2013. And speaking of 2013, it was actually Foles who shepherded the Eagles to the playoffs that year, turning in a brilliant stretch run and earning himself an unlikely Pro Bowl nod after taking over for Michael Vick midway through the season. But that was ancient history. And ultimately, Philadelphia was unable to savor its first NFC East title in almost a half-decade. The day after the Eagles clinched their division, an MRI confirmed their worst fears. Wentz had torn his ACL. He was done for the year, and ostensibly, so were the Eagles. Wentz was their engine, And although he had stepped in admirably for Philly years prior, Foles was unmistakably a backup by 2017. The season prior, in fact, he had started just one game for the Kansas City Chiefs as the backup to Alex Smith, and when the 28-year-old re-signed with the Eagles ahead of the 2017 campaign, it was unequivocally as an insurance policy for Wentz. Except in a twist of fate, the Eagles' championship ambitions were now squarely in Foles' hands. It was nothing short of a dreadful development for Philly fans. However, for Foles, it was an opportunity, the greatest opportunity of his career, and he ran with it. In Week 15, in just his second start since the end of the 2015 campaign, Foles was downright electric. Squaring off against the hapless Giants, Foles threw for 4 touchdowns, leading Philadelphia to victory and securing the Eagles a first-round bye in the playoffs. He wasn't nearly as impressive the following week against Oakland, but he did enough to help the Eagles secure their 13th win of the season and, importantly, home field advantage throughout the playoffs. After all, to that point in the season, the Eagles hadn't lost a game at home. And so, heading into the playoffs, Philadelphia, the NFC's top-seeded team, had every advantage a team can have. But they didn't have their starting quarterback. And so despite their record, their top 5 defense, and their home field advantage, there was little optimism their season would have a glorious ending. In fact, with Foles under center, the Eagles actually headed into their divisional round matchup against the Atlanta Falcons as home field underdogs, marking the first time in NFL playoff history that a number 1 seed was an underdog against a number 6 seed. But as it turned out, the Eagles weren't going away so quickly. Philadelphia's defense stymied Matt Ryan and the Falcons' offense, forcing a pair of turnovers and limiting them to less than 200 yards in the air, while Foles and the Eagles' offense did just enough to keep Philly on top. And with the Eagles clinging to a 5-point lead and the Falcons threatening in the dying moments of the fourth, Philly's defense came up huge yet again, locking up a victory with an impressive goal line stand. For his part, Foles threw for an efficient 246 yards, managing the game effectively but without taking many downfield risks or connecting on any huge plays. It was an adequate performance, but it was hardly an inspiring one. Foles, however, was only getting warmed up. With the NFC Championship and a trip to the Super Bowl on the line the following Sunday, Foles went off against the Minnesota Vikings, picking apart the best defense in the NFL. And I mean picking apart. In the second quarter, Foles connected on a 53-yard bomb to Jeffrey to extend the Eagles' lead.
And Foles able to get away and throw. Pass is caught! Jeffrey, touchdown!
In the third, Foles hit Torrey Smith on a flea flicker for a 41-yard touchdown.
The Eagles are 6 for 8 on third down. Flea flicker. Foles launches downfield. Smith, touchdown!
All told, Foles threw for 352 yards and 3 touchdowns in a shellacking of the Vikings, punching the Eagles' ticket to Super Bowl 52 with one of the most dominant performances a quarterback has ever delivered in a conference championship game. In fact, his QB rating of 141.4 is the 7th highest ever in an NFC or AFC championship game. Somehow, Nick Foles had Philadelphia 1 win away from their first ever Super Bowl title. The journeyman quarterback who had backed up an aging Michael Vick and who later lost his starting job to Case Keenum was on the precipice of football immortality. That said, nobody in their right mind actually expected him to get it. The Eagles' opponent in Super Bowl 52 was none other than the dynastic New England Patriots, the reigning champions who, like Philadelphia, had also gone 13-3 during the regular season and were led by the incomparable Tom Brady. On paper, it was arguably the most lopsided quarterback matchup in Super Bowl history, with the eventual GOAT going up against a veteran backup. But the game isn't played on paper. And on that fateful February evening in Minnesota, Nick Foles dealt one of the few blows to Brady's legacy and authored an epic one for himself. In the first quarter of this proverbial David versus Goliath matchup, it was Foles and the Eagles who drew first blood. Late in the first quarter, Foles delivered a perfect throw to Jeffrey on a deep play-action pass for the game's first touchdown. It was in the closing moments of the first half, though, that Foles delivered perhaps his most memorable contribution of the game, playing the hero on an iconic fourth down trick play, the Philly Special.
4th and goal. And they're going to snap it, and it's Trey Burton who throws caught. Foles, touchdown.
The Eagles were not messing around, and they took a 10-point lead into halftime. But the Patriots are the Patriots. Brady came out guns blazing in the second half, throwing for 2 touchdowns in the first 12 minutes of the third quarter to cut the Eagles' lead to 3. And sure enough, with less than 10 minutes remaining in the game, Brady, with the help of Rob Gronkowski, put New England on top. But that lead didn't last. The Patriots can thank Nick Foles for that. Over the course of the next 7 minutes, Foles orchestrated one of the most resolute drives in Super Bowl history, marching the Eagles from their own 25-yard line deep into Patriots territory. Along the way, he made huge conversions on 3rd down and 4th down and completed 8 of his 10 pass attempts. And when faced with a critical 3rd and 7 from the Patriots' 11-yard line, Foles made no mistake.
Zach Ertz out wide, one-on-one.
Clement flares out to the right, caught over the middle and into the end zone. Zach Ertz for the touchdown.
The Eagles had the lead once again, and although they failed to convert the 2-point conversion, that would soon be rendered moot. On the second play of the ensuing possession, the Eagles forced and recovered a Brady fumble, leading to a 46-yard field goal from Jake Elliott that extended Philly's lead to 8 with just over a minute to go. And ultimately, after moving the ball only as far as their own 49-yard line with time expiring, the Patriots' season and their Super Bowl repeat bid came down to a Hail Mary attempt.
Brady under pressure, escapes the sack, launching one for the end zone. It's a jump ball and it's incomplete. And Gronk was there. And time runs out.
This is the end of the game.
And for the Philadelphia Eagles, the long drought is over. Finally.
Finally, indeed. For the first time ever, the Eagles were Super Bowl champions, and under the most unlikely of circumstances. They had vanquished the mighty Patriots, and they had done so not in spite of, but because of, Nick Foles, who ultimately accounted for 373 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and a receiving touchdown in the victory. It was one of the most incredible performances in Super Bowl history, one that earned him Super Bowl MVP honors. Beyond that, though, it also earned Foles a hallowed place in the annals of Philadelphia sports history and, more broadly, NFL history. Foles, who threw for 6 touchdowns and almost 1,000 yards throughout that postseason, was a fairy tale come to life, and his brilliance off the bench turned him into a bona fide legend, the backup who won a Super Bowl. And sure enough, Foles returned to his backup role the following season and has mostly remained one since, starting only 19 games since his Super Bowl victory. But that only reinforces how singular of a player he is. He's a backup who achieved football immortality, and his heroics for the Eagles in 2017 will forever remain one of the most incredible, inspiring chapters in NFL history. Thanks for watching. If you like this video and want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button.